Greetings, everybody. Welcome back to an all-new review of All American. And, of course, in today's episode, we'll be giving you guys a reaction and a breakdown for the most recent episode of All American, which was episode 10, which, of course, if you haven't caught it, feel free to check it out for free in the CW app. So, for starters, I would just like to say that this episode, was really good and for the most part. And there was some things that I definitely didn't see coming and others, that we knew were likely to happen. So, as always, before I get started, you guys are more than welcome to comment your thoughts on last night's episode, as well as everything, that we talk about here today in this video. So, without any further ado, let's hop into today's breakdown. There's definitely some things to go through and, I break down how that might play out in future episodes. So, this episode starts with Jordan, JJ, and Asher at the hangout. And, of course, from the looks of things, we didn't get to see the homecoming dance. But, oh well, we must not have missed much there, But anyways, we find out that JJ was crowned homecoming king. And, he's kind of wearing out his crown, by wearing it after the dance and everything. But, hey, JJ deserves it. So anyways, then we see Spencer and Chris come by and JJ's asking Spencer where his crown's at. But, then we hear that Spencer didn't win it, which was definitely kind of surprising for me. I don't know about you guys so much, but, congrats to Chris nonetheless. Anyways, Chris didn't wear his crown, because he thought it would seem a little corny to be wearing it after the dance had ended. And, I feel kind of bad for JJ in this moment. I feel like in a way he's also surprised that Spencer didn't win, and at the same time, I think he feels a little awkward maybe in a way. But, in other news, we see Spencer go and sit with Jordan at his table and, he's wondering where the girls are at. And, in this moment, we see Jordan kind of picking on him in a way by, asking if he meant where Liv was. And, obviously since we didn't see the dance, then nothing must have really happened. But, I'm kind of curious to see if something did happen and the writers are kind of just waiting to tell us, But I think until we do hear something that might tease that something happened at the dance, then I'll just kind of let it go for the time being. So, anyways, after this, we see Olivia. She's attending her new Narcotics Anonymous, and I can't remember the name of the girl that seemed overly eager to be her sponsor, and everything when she first got there. But anyways, I'm not sure if we'll start to see some more of her moving forward. But afterwards, we see that Liv doesn't really want to share or introduce herself in the first meeting. And, for me personally, of course, you don't really like to see this because that's kind of, the point in her trying this out, and but afterwards we see that the group leader, which is the nurse from back when Spencer got shot and everything, it's Nurse Joy. But we see her confront Liv about that, and that was good to see. And it was kind of like a wake-up call that she needs to start participating in order to help her get past her addiction, because otherwise what's the point in doing this, so hopefully that's kind of able to steer her in that direction where she's able to start sharing and everything and realize, kind of what's forcing her to get back into that addiction. And, you guys gonna get what I'm trying to say. So, anyways, afterwards, we're back at the hangout and a couple of the Westlake boys show up, Cam and Dane. And, of course, Dane is the father of Simone's child, but we see them confront Simone and Vanessa, who are walking in, and Dane kind of proceeds to ask Simone how she's doing. And I like how Simone's able to just confront him about, having the nerve to ask about that after everything they've been through, together. And, after getting her pregnant and all, But anyways, after this, we see Spencer and Jordan come out and confront them. And, kind of as expected, we see Cam... Or, we see, tensions fly, and, Cam's going on about how he's glad he's transferred because he's got more offers for college than Spencer does. And, of course, I'm really hoping in that moment that Spencer can kind of prove them all wrong by, getting some offers. Because obviously, like I said in yesterday's video, Spencer getting some offers will be crucial to where the show goes moving forward, But anyways, Cam and Dane, they're trashing Crenshaw and talking about how they were looking forward to coming down on them in the playoffs, but it looks like they won't have a shot to because they won't be there, but I'm really just hoping these guys get what they have coming their way at some point, it'd just be nice to see Spencer get that last word, but let me know what you guys thought about this part. It didn't really surprise me all that much with all the trash talk and everything, but like I said, hopefully these guys get what they deserve, and, that's a stomping in the playoffs, so, hopefully. And also they play Beverly in their next game, so, we'll see how that one goes and break it down later on. Okay, so next we see JJ and Asher, and JJ wants him to put in a good word for him when it comes to things with Vanessa, which, he does. But obviously the thing for me in this scene is that JJ's still trying to make things work with Vanessa despite what he already knows regarding Asher and Vanessa's past. And, I've said this, JJ does deserve someone that's good for him, but it's like you almost want him to stop trying to make this thing work with Vanessa, because you don't want to see him get his heart broken, if you will. But anyways, afterwards is when we see Asher and Vanessa talking, and, while they're talking, it's clear that Vanessa still doesn't really want anything to do with a relationship with JJ, and I don't really care, to be honest with all of you, because I don't think she deserves him anyways, but she clearly wants to be with Asher and tells him that she's waiting for him. And, for Asher in this moment, I think he knows that they shouldn't get into anything with the feelings of JJ being involved, but you can tell that he still wants to be with her. And I think that once all this love triangle drama kind of boils over and everything, we will see Asher and Vanessa get together, and hopefully JJ's able to realize that it just wasn't really meant to be when it came to him and Vanessa, and, is kind of able to forgive Asher for everything, because you don't really like to see JJ being upset about these types of things. Like I always say, he's kind of that much needed comic relief with everything that goes on in the show. So, moving on now to the next morning, we see Spencer at his place and Grace talking about the game that night, that they've gotten the papers going on about how Spencer hasn't been able to deliver on his promise, and that he's just been having a bad season himself. But, obviously what Spencer and the team have had going on this season have been tough to overcome, but I do think that they'll be able to overcome all obstacles. And I think that for Spencer, he knows that these next couple of games he's going to need to be at his best to get a good offer. And this game in this episode was kind of that first step in getting a good shot at football beyond high school, which, we'll get into a little bit later. So, let's hope they can continue to get it done, and get in the right direction. So, back in Crenshaw, Mo's back, and we see her go up to Coop and asks where Patience is because she needs to sign the papers that will pretty much release her from her contract with JP. But, Coop tries to confront her about why she won't just give him to her because, Coop is the only one that seems to think that Mo might still have something up her sleeve. And, we'll kind of get into this more later on in this episode. But in this moment, I do like Coop's attitude. And I mostly say this because if Mo is up to something, which we'll get into that later on, then somebody will be there that is on to her and is able to keep her from doing whatever she may be thinking, But again, we'll kind of get into that a little bit later on and, see if anything changes prior to that. So, anyways, now we're back in Beverly, and we see Asher telling JJ that he doesn't think things are going to work out with he and Vanessa because she's interested in somebody else. And, I like that Asher's able to just tell JJ that it's him she's interested in and not lie about it, which would just create more problems if he and Vanessa do get together, But anyways, JJ's hurt by what he said and, pushes him up against the locker saying, I knighted you and everything, and now you're going after my girl. And I've said this, but I feel like in a way JJ had to have seen this coming after he heard about their past. But, the thing about this conversation for me is that he didn't seem to know just how close they had gotten. And I was a little bit confused with that, but, that's why he took it so hard. And, anyways, afterwards we see him walk away and slam his locker, and that seems to irritate Jordan, based on the sound of it and everything, which makes you wonder if he's still feeling the side effects of his concussion. which we'll get into that a little bit later in this episode, though. Don't worry. So, it's definitely it was definitely kind of a moment that was interesting to see, and it could definitely have an effect on later on. So, next we're back in Crenshaw, and we see Billy sitting at his desk when Spencer walks in. He's curious about the status of eligible players. And at the start of this, Billy is playing all upset, as if all the guys failed their GPA requirements and are still ineligible. But that's when we hear him say that there's a few new guys that are eligible to play in tonight's game. And, this moment was definitely nice to see, knowing that the tutoring process is somewhat working and they're getting back to being a team at 100%, and afterwards we see Billy telling Spencer that he invited 9 scouts to come attend the game and see Spencer play, and 8 of them accepted it and, will be attending. So, of course, this was really good to hear. And, as well, it's almost just like, okay, things are finally starting to turn around. They have some of their guys back. There'll be scouts at the game. Things couldn't be better. And at that point, it's just a matter of the team playing well and Spencer being able to get a good offer on the table, which we'll kind of get into later in this episode. But, otherwise, in this conversation, we see Billy telling Spencer about how Corey was obviously a really good player in his day and, how he set the Crenshaw record for most touchdowns in a game with 7. And, get this, it was at homecoming. And Spencer's kind of going on about how he wishes more people would remember how good he was in his day and everything. And that's when we hear Billy say that he'll be doing a little something at halftime to make sure that everyone remembers just how big of a player Corey was. And, we'll get into it a little bit later on in this episode. When I first heard it, I was definitely like, okay, I'm curious to see what goes down here, And, again, we'll get into that a little bit later on. But, next we see Billy making his way over to Beverly. He's talking to Jordan, who's in the locker room, and he lets him know that he'll have a scout there to watch him in their game against Westlake. And for me personally, this is finally Jordan getting that chance to prove himself and play football at the next level, and hopefully he can take advantage of it. But anyways, that's when we see Coach Montez come in. And for me personally, it was good to see that Billy and Coach Montez seem to have like that mutual respect for one another and, wish the best for their teams, But anyways, we see that Coach Montez didn't really want to tell Jordan about the scout coming to watch because she didn't want him to get it into his head, So obviously in this moment, I was hoping that Jordan's just able to have the best game he could possibly have in order to have a shot to play beyond high school, So we'll get into it a little more later on in this episode and, hope that it works out. And, hopefully what Billy having told him doesn't get in his head and, puts all the pressure on him and we see him not play all that well. But, anyways, after this, we see Olivia and she's at another meeting. And this time it seems like she's able to take that advice from Nurse Joy and open up to the group. But anyways, afterwards, we see that same girl from before, telling her that it was so brave of her to come out with her story about her relapse and, says that it wasn't her fault as to how she got back into her addiction, But then we see Nurse Joy kind of cut her off and tell Olivia that she has been, that she has to stop blaming other people for her relapse and take responsibility. And, the thing about this situation for me is that Nurse Joy definitely makes a valid point when she says that Olivia has to stop blaming the circumstances because, chances are she was going to find a way to drink anyways. But, I do personally think that the situation she was in where she was all alone, did have something to do with her falling back into her addiction. I don't know if she would have done it if there was others around, but it's like, okay, I do trust Nurse Joy's credibility and think that Olivia does need to take some of the responsibility for her fallback and, move on to the next phase of her life. Let me know what you guys think, though. Do you agree with Nurse Joy when she says that Olivia needs to start putting some of the responsibility on herself for why she relapsed? Or, do you think she should have blamed the circumstances? It's definitely interesting, and I'm curious to see how Liv goes about this. I personally kind of hope she listens to Nurse Joy, but, I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens and, hope for the best. Because, kind of like I was saying earlier, Olivia, she I don't really think she would have continued to drink if there had been other people around. But because that's what I feel like Nurse Joy is saying when she says she would have found a way to drink anyways. But I don't know if I trust that. But it's like, okay, I do still trust her credibility. So, does she know what she's talking about when it comes to knowing what's best for Olivia, to move past this? It's definitely a lot to think about. So, um, anyways, next we're back in Crenshaw, and Billy's giving the team a prep talk. If they lose, they don't make the playoffs. So, obviously we obviously knew what the circumstances were, and obviously the big question is, can they do it? Obviously we hope so. And in this moment, it was nice to see them kind of come together as one and get some of that confidence that they can make a run and everything. And this is the fullest they've been, in terms of having all their players and being in a position to win games. So hopefully it all goes well, and we'll find that out later in this episode. So now it is game time for Crenshaw. Things don't get off to a great start. They allow an early touchdown, but things seem to be shaping up pretty well for Beverly, though. We'll come back to that, but for Crenshaw, we saw Nani kind of shank the first kickoff of the games that got returned for a touchdown, and they were just kind of struggling to get anything going. And we did see Spencer score a touchdown, but at the half they were down 14-7, and I was just thinking in my head, okay, they can't afford to play like this again for another half. Otherwise, their season could very well be going down the drain. But, as for Beverly, I know they started the game with a touchdown, to Asher. But outside of that, I'm not 100% sure how the first half went. I would imagine it was somewhat similar to how it went down for Crenshaw. But anyways, we'll get back into this a little bit later, and into the second halves of these games. So, while the games are still going on in the first half, we see Layla and Coop in the Crenshaw Cafe, and Layla wants to know what Coop was telling her about earlier when she said that JP basically had to let Patience come on the tour with Lil Jewel, And Coop tells her what's been going on and says that he had to let Patience come on tour because of how he was caught having an affair with Lil Jewel. And obviously it turns out that's what Layla had no knowledge of. And for me personally, I like how Layla was able to just confront Coop about telling her the truth, because she was sick of being lied to, which of course she's had a good sample size of this season, but anyways, it's a lot to process. And, now Layla might have some talking to do with her dad, which, we'll kind of get into a little later on in this episode. So, anyways, now we're back to football, and both Beverly and Crenshaw are being kind of put through the ringer. During halftime, we see Billy giving a speech to the whole crowd, and he dedicates the game to Corey, Spencer's dad, of course, and reveals that they've placed his number 5 on the field to be retired. And now this was definitely kind of a touching moment, and in this moment, you really hope that this is enough to light a fire in Spencer to play well. And, it was just nice to see that now Corey's legacy will be remembered forever. And, what better way than by retiring his number and placing it on the field, So it was definitely a good moment. Hopefully we'll see what happens in the second half. So, in Beverly, Jordan doesn't seem to have the same kind of fire that Spencer does, though. We see the moment wherein he's sacked and isn't getting up. So, obviously this was the moment that we all kind of anticipated. And in this moment, I was just anxious to see whether or not there would be some long-term effects, which we'll get into a little bit later on. But obviously, we hope for the best, which, again, we'll get into in just a little bit. So don't worry about it. We'll come back to it. We're not done with it yet. But back in Crenshaw, we see that Spencer has just absolutely gone off in this second half and is tied his dad's record for most touchdowns in a game. And, Spencer, he's being selfless on the sideline. He doesn't want to continue to play because he wants the record to belong to Corey. But anyways, we do see Spencer go back into the game, and he's about to beat the record, on a long running play. And instead he drops to a knee on his dad's number. And, I feel like in this moment, Billy's able to realize that Spencer taking the knee solidifies the fact that he wants to be able to share the record with Corey. And, I say this because Billy did want Spencer to go back into the game and break the record. And he tried to help Spencer realize that Corey would be proud because of the fact that his own son broke his record, not because he lost it. But, obviously that wasn't really enough for Spencer, and he decided to take the knee. So, all in all, this was another kind of touching moment, and it's nice knowing that they'll be able to share the record for the time being. So, anyways, afterwards we see Billy's phone ring on the sideline, and obviously it's about Jordan. And, the next thing we know, Spencer and Billy are running into the ER to meet up with the rest of the family. And, obviously we don't really know anything at this point. All we know is that he isn't doing all that well. So, of course, we also see Spencer and Olivia hug in this moment, but nothing much happens. So, maybe that's a sign that they've been able to confront one another after their conversation in the last episode. But, anyways, we'll get into their relationship at some point. It's not going to just be like this all the time. So, moving on now, we see Jordan's doctor approach the family, and Laura starts asking him a bunch of questions. But, then we see Simone confront her by calling her out for not allowing Jordan's doctor to inform them on what's going on. And that's when we see Laura kind of go off on Simone, being like, okay, you're his friend, I thought it was okay for you to come here, but, now I'm going to have to ask you to leave. And, she's not going anywhere in this situation, in this situation. And this is basically where it comes out, the wife trumps the mother, and she just wants to know what's going on from her husband's doctor, and she just said, Jordan and I are married. So obviously it's out now, and this wasn't exactly what I had pictured as to how it would come out, but, put all that aside and just consider the fact that they now know they're married. And, what may Billy and Laura do about it? It's definitely interesting. And we don't really, in this episode, we don't really see them talk about it a whole lot, just because they're making sure Jordan's okay and everything, and he'll be able to get past this all right. But it's not going to be gone. It's not going to be put aside forever. So anyways, next we see just a little scene between Spencer and Olivia. And Olivia's just talking about how much trouble Jordan's going to be in now that Billy and Laura know. And Spencer's telling Liv that he'll always have her back and everything, which is really the only interaction they have in this episode. But I think this shows that they are hopefully in a good place at this point, and everything, able to realize that once they get back to 100%, they'll be in a position where they're made for each other, But anyways, then we see Laura confront Spencer and Olivia and ask if they knew about Jordan and Simone's marriage. And, of course they do. And Laura kind of confronts them about why they would hide the biggest moment of Jordan's life away from her for months. And, obviously you understand Laura's perspective, and I do think she definitely has a right to be upset. So, it's definitely a big moment. And, I did think that Spencer and Olivia would get just a little bit of heat for having known, but obviously when it comes down to it, Jordan and Simone are going to be the ones with the heat. So, anyways, we see Simone approach them after this and says that the doctor is hopeful that Jordan will fully recover. And in this moment, Laura is clearly angry with Simone, regarding their marriage. And, I don't know if it's just me, but Laura doesn't really seem to have all that good of a bond with Simone. And that kind of makes you wonder if we will see a situation wherein they have to get a divorce. But, I like how Simone's able to confront Laura and tell her that, if she really has a problem with their marriage, then she needs to take it up with them. And, I like this because it shows how strong Simone is and is willing to confront Jordan's parents when it comes to talking about the marriage. And, of course, I don't blame Laura for being angry, but I think that she should continue to allow them to be married, because I think that they're both really happy in the places that they are, at this moment. And, it's definitely, you'd hate to see him get a divorce. And, obviously a divorce would kind of put things into perspective, like I said in yesterday's episode with Simone's spinoff show and, just Jordan's future in general. But kind of hope it doesn't happen, So next we see Layla confront her dad, and she brings up patience and, the fact that he basically let her on the tour because because he had to, as a result of an affair with another one of his artists. And tack on the fact that Lil Jewel is married, and that makes things even more worse, considering what he did. But in this moment, I like how Layla was kind of able to confront him about how he's had moments wherein he's hooked up with all these different artists, including Layla's mom. And hopefully this comes to an end at some point, and, her dad is just able to make it about the music and nothing else. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. That's about all I've got for that. But, it was a good moment where Layla's able to stand up, for what her dad has done and, confront him about it. So, next, we go back to the hospital, and Jordan's starting to wake up, and we see Simone there with him, and she informs it that the family knows everything about their marriage and all. And, we also hear that Beverly lost their game in the last couple of seconds to Westlake, and which is definitely a bummer. But I feel like in this scene, we see Jordan kind of trying to process the fact that his parents now know that he's married and hoping that they can get past it and, continue to be a married couple. So, it's we'll kind of get into that probably in the future episodes, because we don't really find out all that much about them confronting it in this episode. So anyways, next we're back in Crenshaw, and Coop is at this rally meetup that Mo has organized. And we hear Mo talking about profiling and how their own kind has suffered from this every single day. And, in a way, that's what Coop's been doing to Mo, and so when we see her make an anti-profiling sign, that's kind of when she apologizes to Mo and acknowledges that she's changed and has become a new person. And then as Coop leaves, we definitely see a big moment here wherein Mo turns to someone and says that she's finally let her guard down, which can't be good. So obviously, I was just saying to myself, of course this is happening. Coop was on to her this whole time, and just as she believes she's changed is when we see a big moment where it turns out that Mo could very well be out for revenge. And, for me personally, I'm really just hoping that Coop is able to realize this before it's too late, because otherwise, we might be getting ready to see some stuff go down. And, it's just like Mo just had this big plan of waiting for revenge. And, of course it has to happen, because obviously they're not going to keep Coop on to her this whole time, because they want us to see a scenario wherein Mo does go after her. So, it's going to be big, and I'm a little bit surprised. Mo did make it seem like she had changed, but obviously, based on what we saw there, her intentions could still very well be the same. So let me know what you guys think about it. I'm definitely interested in hearing. So next we're back at the hospital, and the doctor comes in and tells the Baker family that Jordan never fully recovered from his first injury, and Jordan admits to what he did. And after this, we see the doctor ask the family to leave and tells Jordan something serious, but we don't get a chance to see what he says. But don't worry, we'll get into it in a little bit. So obviously in this scene, it comes to light to everybody that Jordan was playing while he still had symptoms of a concussion, and that could be crucial considering what's happening now, and which we'll get into that in a little bit, here at the end of this episode. So, moving on now, next we see Spencer outside of the hospital, and Grace comes over to congratulate him on the game he played, and, informs him that the scouts asked him to visit each of the schools. So this moment was definitely really good to see, and it's like, okay, Spencer had scouts that want him to visit, and, we'll just have to wait and see what he might choose at some point. It's obviously a big decision, and it puts the show into perspective for future seasons, so we'll just have to wait and see. But, I think this game for Spencer proved that he can still play really well when he puts his mind to it, and that, people should look out for him, because, I really liked, just beast mode Spencer in this episode. Just, he had his mind off Olivia and everything, and he was just purely focused on football, and that was really nice to see. So, and that was one of the best games he's played, throughout the duration of this series. So, 7 touchdowns. And finally, we see the Baker family going to talk to Jordan, and that's when we hear the big news wherein Jordan says that the doctor told him he doesn't know if he'll be able to play for the rest of the season. And obviously there's big implications here. It's Jordan's senior year, and he doesn't really have a future in football at this point. So, what could we see? Could Jordan get into something else and go to college that way? Could we see him disobey the doctor's guidelines and still try to play? I don't really know if I see that happening, knowing the fact that everybody else is aware, because he told them, obviously. But, just let me know what you guys think, and I'll try my best to get back to you. But it's definitely a lot, and I'm curious to see how Jordan's future plays out, with what he's having to face. So, all right, and with that thought, I think we are once again to the point in this episode where I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say. And as always, feel free to just go for it. Let's just, keep the conversation civil as always. And feel free to like and share this video and subscribe to the channel while you're at it. I'd really appreciate it. It'd definitely be a help. And I think you guys, anybody that enjoys All American, you'll enjoy this channel. I can guarantee it. So, also, if you haven't heard, feel free to follow my Instagram page. The link is in the description, where I post updates on the videos I'll be posting. And I also give you guys any updates if we may experience, a delay or cancellation of some sort. But until next time, this has been Austin Bielik, bringing you All American videos daily for the duration of Season 3. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye!